All right, so just quickly, I want to go over some my notes for the beginning of the French Revolution, and really, it comes down to in France we have an outdated social system. There's three classes: the first estate, second estate, and third estate. The first estate's made of the clergy, which is the religious noble or religious leaders. Second estate is the nobles, and the third estate is the majority of the population. You can see within this chart. The first estate again is the Roman Catholic clergy or the priests. Second estate consists of the nobles, which is about 2% of the population. And the rest of it is a third estate, the bourgeoisie, the city workers, and the peasants, who peasants are basically 80% of the population at this time. The clergy owned 10% of the land and paid no taxes to the state whatsoever. They did do some social services like school and orphanages and hospitals, but they are also very backwards and they condemn the Enlightenment because, again, the Enlightenment thinkers are really going to take the power away from the church. The nobles had the top jobs in the government, the army, and the courts. They had very little money income and owned 20% of the land, even though only 2% of the population. The third estate consisted of 27 million people, and the middle class was the bourgeoisie, made up of bankers, merchants, and manufacturers, lawyers, doctors, journalists, and professors at this time. And the rule of the peasants, 9 out of 10 people in France are basically made up of the peasants and their peasant life. There's really some discontent at this time. The best jobs were reserved for the nobles. Again, urban workers earned horrible wages. Peasants were burdened with taxes and paying most of the fees for the government. The Enlightenment ideas were basically led to the question of the old regime. Why are we doing this stuff? Why are we going to continue to pay taxes but only control a small portion of the land? So, what you see here in this very hard to read chart, land ownership, taxation, and population. What you see is this number, or these two things, all should be the same, and they're not. And we see that the land ownership has nothing to do with taxes and the population itself. So the peasants and the bourgeoisie are very much upset by this. We also see that France is going to huge deficit spending. Basically, they're in debt. They spend more than it takes. And Louis the 14th left France in debt with the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution. Thank you, France, for doing that. But you did go into debt to do that. By 1789, half of France's tax income went to just paying off interest of its debt, nothing else. And really, we also start to see the crumbling economy. The economic decline occurred in the 1770s. We saw it started with a bad harvest of food, which sent prices soaring. And then the peasants begin to revolt. And this is where the French Revolution really begins. The demand for bread is really the most important thing. Again, they're wanting the basics bread. They attacked manor houses of the nobles. So this is how the French Revolution started. And we'll continue on to this tomorrow, but you guys will get a little reading going into it and how the first revolution really begins. Thank you guys for listening.